When you become emotionally unpredictable on the surface, but internally stable at your core, something powerful happens in her mind. Not chaos, contrast. And contrast is what captures attention and keeps it awake long after the interaction ends. Most men misunderstand this completely. They think attraction is built through constant availability, consistent reassurance, and emotional transparency. In reality, that creates comfort, not fascination. Comfort soothes the nervous system. Fascination stimulates it. Psychologically, the human mind is wired to resolve uncertainty. When everything about you is clear, explained, and emotionally accessible on demand, her mind rests. But when your behavior is calm, grounded and self-directed, yet not fully predictable, her mind stays engaged. She begins replaying moments, tone shifts, pauses, expressions, not because you confused her, but because you didn't collapse into emotional certainty. This doesn't mean playing games. It means not leaking your emotional state unnecessarily. You don't react instantly. You don't explain yourself every time. You don't rush to match her energy. Instead, you remain centered. Your mood doesn't rise or fall based on how she shows up. And that emotional consistency beneath behavioral variability creates depth. From a philosophical standpoint, desire moves toward what feels sovereign. When a man is emotionally stable, yet not emotionally dependent, he communicates inner authority. He is not withholding emotion, he is governing it. And that distinction is crucial. Withholding creates tension rooted in insecurity. Governing creates tension rooted in strength. You might be warm one moment, distant the next, not because you're pulling away, but because you're engaged with your own life. You might challenge her perspective without needing agreement. You might listen deeply without offering constant affirmation. These small deviations from expectation disrupt pattern recognition. And when pattern recognition breaks, attention intensifies. This is why men who are always available are easily forgotten, while men who are present but not predictable linger in thought. Her mind doesn't fully close the loop with you. There's no emotional resolution. And unresolved emotional energy doesn't disappear. It recirculates. What matters most is that this unpredictability is never rooted in insecurity. If it is, she senses it immediately. Emotional instability repels. Emotional stability paired with behavioral nuance attracts. You remain consistent in values, calm in demeanor, and grounded in purpose. Only your availability fluctuates, and it fluctuates naturally, not strategically. At a deeper level, this dynamic mirrors life itself. What captivates us is not what is fully known, but what feels meaningful yet unfolding. You become a living question mark, not because you're unclear, but because you're complete without explanation. And here's the paradox. The less you try to occupy her thoughts, the more space you create for them. When you don't chase emotional closure, her mind does it for you. When you don't demand attention, attention grows. This is not about manipulation, it's about alignment. Alignment between who you are and how you show up. When you live from inner stability, you no longer need to perform emotionally, and performance is exhausting. Presence is memorable. So if you want to be the man she can't stop thinking about, stop trying to be understood completely. Be grounded. Be disciplined. Be engaged with life beyond her, because the mind doesn't obsess over what is predictable. It obsesses over what feels solid and slightly out of reach. When you learn how to trigger her emotions without seeking validation, you step into a level of influence most men never reach. This is where attraction stops being situational and becomes psychological, because emotions, once activated, don't simply shut off when the conversation ends. They echo, they replay, they linger. And the key difference is this: you are not trying to be liked, you are willing to be felt. Most men approach interaction with an unconscious agenda. They want approval, agreement, reassurance. They soften their opinions, over-explain their intentions, and adjust their energy to keep things smooth. That might create harmony, but it doesn't create impact. Emotional impact comes from friction, not conflict, but contrast. From the courage to express truth without attachment to the outcome. Psychologically, emotions are strengthened when they are activated without resolution. When you challenge her thinking gently, when you express a perspective that isn't designed to please her, when you speak from clarity instead of consensus, you introduce emotional movement. Her mind has to respond. It has to process. And when there's no immediate reassurance to settle that movement, it continues internally. This doesn't mean being argumentative or provocative for attention. It means being honest without cushioning your truth. You can disagree calmly. You can question assumptions respectfully. You can express desire, curiosity, or boundaries without waiting for permission. When you do this, you signal emotional independence. And emotional independence is magnetic. From a philosophical perspective, validation seeking is a form of self-abandonment. It places your inner state in someone else's hands. When you stop doing that, when you allow your emotions to exist without needing them mirrored back, you reclaim authorship over yourself, and people are drawn to those who seem self-authored. You'll notice something interesting when you stop seeking validation. Her reactions intensify. She may lean in emotionally, push back playfully, or become more expressive. Not because she feels controlled, but because she feels engaged. You've given her something to respond to that isn't pre-packaged for approval. This is also why compliments that are too eager fall flat, while statements of perspective land deeply. Saying you're amazing seeks agreement. Saying you have a depth. Most people miss invites reflection. One asks for validation, the other creates it. And when you don't follow up emotional stimulation with reassurance, when you don't immediately soften, clarify, or apologize, you allow her mind to keep working. She replays your words. She revisits the moment. She wonders what you meant, how you saw her, why it affected her the way it did. That internal dialogue is where attraction deepens. The discipline here is restraint. You resist the urge to smooth things over. You let silence do its work. You allow emotional tension to exist without rushing to dissolve it. This signals confidence, not arrogance, but self-trust. At a deeper level, what you're really doing is giving her an experience of emotional leadership. You are not asking her how to feel. You are not outsourcing your truth. You are showing her what it looks like to stand in emotion without collapsing into it. That's rare, and rarity commands attention. This is also why men who are constantly agreeable are easily forgotten, while men who leave emotional impressions are remembered. Memory is not built on comfort, it's built on intensity. So speak honestly, challenge gently, express depth without chasing affirmation. Let your words land without trying to manage the reaction. One of the most underestimated forces in human psychology is timing, specifically knowing when to leave. When you exit a conversation before emotional saturation sets in, you do something rare, you interrupt completion. And the human mind does not like incomplete emotional experiences. It replays them, it returns to them. It tries to finish what was left open. This is where memory turns into fixation. Most men stay too long. They keep talking until the energy fades, the mystery dissolves, and the emotional charge neutralizes. They drain the moment dry, thinking more time equals more connection. But psychologically, the opposite is true. Emotional intensity has a peak. Stay beyond that peak and the nervous system settles. Leave at the peak and the nervous system keeps working long after you're gone. This is not about being abrupt or cold, it's about being attuned. You feel the moment when the conversation is alive, when there's laughter, tension, curiosity, emotional movement. And instead of squeezing it for reassurance, you step away, calmly, naturally, without explanation. From a psychological standpoint, this creates what's called an open loop. The brain is wired to resolve loops. When something ends cleanly, the mind closes the file. When something ends mid-energy, the mind keeps it open. She replays what you said. She imagines what you might have said next. She feels the emotional residue because it was never fully discharged. This is why a short, powerful interaction is often remembered more vividly than a long one. Duration does not create impact, contrast does. And contrast is created by restraint. Philosophically, this reflects a deeper truth about desire. It thrives in space. When you give too much, too often, too freely, desire collapses into familiarity. When you allow space, intentional, grounded space, you invite longing. Longing is not need, it's anticipation. You'll notice how different this feels when you're on the receiving end. Think about the conversations that stayed with you. They didn't linger until exhaustion. They ended with something unsaid, a look held a second too long, a thought interrupted, a feeling left hanging. That's not accidental, that's psychological imprinting. What matters most is your internal posture when you leave. You don't rush, you don't apologize, you don't justify. You simply exit because you have a life to return to, purpose, direction, movement. And that unspoken message lands louder than words: my time is full, not empty. This also protects you from emotional overinvestment. When you learn to leave while things are good, you prevent attachment from turning into dependency. You remain centered. You don't need the moment to continue to feel complete. That self-sufficiency is felt, and it's deeply attractive. Many men fear that leaving early will signal dissent. Heirist. In reality, it signals value. Scarcity created by self-respect, not manipulation. She doesn't feel abandoned. She feels curious. And curiosity is the beginning of desire. At a deeper level, what you're really doing is trusting the moment instead of forcing it. You allow connection to breathe. You don't trap it. And what is free has room to return, stronger. So the next time the energy is alive, resist the urge to stay until it fades. Let the moment end on its highest note. Walk away grounded, not grasping. There is a profound psychological impact in being truly seen, and an even deeper one in not clinging to it afterward. When you make her feel understood at a level most people never reach, and then calmly return to your own world, you create an emotional imprint that doesn't fade when the interaction ends. It follows her, it lingers, it revisits her when the noise quiets down at night. Most people listen to respond. Very few listen to understand. When you pay attention not just to her words, but to the meaning beneath them, her contradictions, her pauses, the emotions she hasn't fully articulated, you offer something rare. You reflect her inner world back to her with clarity. You name things she feels, but hasn't organized into language yet. That moment alone creates connection. Psychologically, this triggers emotional validation at the identity level. She doesn't just feel heard, she feels recognized. And recognition touches something deep in the human psyche, the desi. To be known without having to perform. When you do this calmly, without praise-seeking or emotional dependency, her nervous system relaxes. She feels safe being real. But here's where most men break the spell. They linger. They stay in that space too long. They keep engaging, explaining, nurturing, following up, trying to secure the connection they just created. And in doing so, they turn depth into dependency. The power is not just in seeing her. It's in seeing her and then leaving her with it. From a philosophical standpoint, this is the difference between presence and possession. Presence says, I understand you. Possession says, now stay with me. Desire grows toward presence. It suffocates under possession. When you return to your own world, your work, your purpose, your rhythm, you communicate something without words, that your life is full, meaningful, and not contingent on her response. That message lands deeply, because now the emotional depth you created isn't anchored to constant access. It's suspended in space. And the mind doesn't let go of suspended meaning easily. She starts replaying the interaction, not because you disappeared, but because you didn't collapse into her orbit. She wonders how you saw what others missed, why you didn't stay longer, why the moment felt complete without being consumed. That contrast, intimacy without attachment, is rare, and rarity commands attention. This is also where self-respect becomes attractive. You don't rush to continue the conversation. You don't text immediately to maintain momentum. You don't explain what the moment meant. You trust it. You let it stand on its own. At a deeper level, you are showing her that connection doesn't require sacrifice of self, that understanding doesn't demand ownership, and that realization quietly dismantles resistance. Because now closeness doesn't feel dangerous, it feels spacious. Many men believe they must constantly reinforce attraction. In truth, attraction reinforces itself when given room. When you step back into your own life after a moment of depth, you allow her to step forward internally. Her thoughts move towards you because you are no longer pulling them. This isn't withdrawal, it's integration. You integrate the moment into your life instead of orbiting around it. And that grounded integration is felt. So the next time you truly see her, really see her, don't chase the echo of the moment. Let it live where it belongs, inside her. At a certain point, attraction stops responding to effort and starts responding to restraint. This is where emotional discipline becomes magnetic, not silence as a tactic, not distance as manipulation, but self-control as a reflection of inner order. When you can feel the impulse to reach out, to explain, to reassure, and you choose not to act from that impulse, something powerful happens, both inside you and inside her perception of you. Most people are governed by emotional reflex. They feel and they act. They desire, and they pursue immediately. That predictability feels safe at first, but it quickly becomes uninteresting. The human mind is not drawn to what is always available. It's drawn to what feels intentional. When your actions are measured, when your words are precise rather than abundant, you signal mastery over yourself. Psychologically, this creates contrast. You are present but not reactive, interested but not consumed. That balance communicates value without a single declaration. She begins to sense that your attention is not automatic. It's chosen. And chosen attention carries weight. There is also something deeper happening here. Emotional discipline communicates boundaries, and boundaries create respect. When you don't overextend emotionally, you protect the meaning of connection. You don't cheapen it through constant availability. You allow it to breathe. This tells her that being close to you requires intention, not just access. From a philosophical perspective, this is the difference between desire and need. Need is loud. Desire is quiet but persistent. Need asks to be filled. Desire invites pursuit. When you move through interactions without emotional urgency, you shift the dynamic. She is no longer responding to your energy. She is interpreting it. And interpretation keeps the mind engaged long after the interaction ends. Many men believe that showing consistency means showing constant attention. In reality, consistency is about emotional stability, not frequency. You can be consistent in your tone, your values, your presence, without being constantly present. That steadiness becomes a reference point. She knows what you represent even when you're not there. This is also where mystery is born, not from secrecy but from depth. When you don't narrate your every feeling or intention, you leave space for curiosity. The mind fills gaps naturally, and what it fills them with is often more powerful than anything you could have said outright. Importantly, this restraint must come from fullness, not fear. If you pull back hoping to provoke a reaction, the energy becomes anxious. But if you pull back because your life is already engaged with purpose, growth, direction, the energy is calm. That calm is unmistakable. It communicates that you are grounded, not strategizing. When she senses that your attention doesn't disappear when she's absent, but also doesn't intensify when she's near, she begins to wonder. Not in insecurity, but in intrigue. Your emotional center doesn't move, and stability is deeply attractive in a world of emotional volatility. Over time, this teaches her something subtle. Connection with you is not a performance. There is no pressure to maintain constant engagement. And paradoxically, that freedom draws her closer, because now the connection feels like a choice, not an obligation. At the deepest level, what makes someone unforgettable is not how much emotion they express, but how clearly they live in alignment with themselves. This final point is not about tactics, timing, or even attraction in the traditional sense. It's about embodiment. When your life has direction, when your actions are governed by values rather than validation, you stop trying to occupy space in someone else's mind, and paradoxically, that's when you do. Human attention is instinctively drawn to purpose. Not ambition as noise, but purpose as gravity. When a man is internally organized, when his days are structured around growth, discipline, and a vision larger than romance, his presence changes. He listens differently. He speaks with economy. He moves without rush. That internal order is felt immediately, even if it's never explained. Psychologically, this activates admiration before desire. Admiration is powerful because it doesn't fade quickly. Desire can be triggered by excitement, by novelty, by chemistry. Admiration is triggered by consistency, integrity, and direction. When a woman senses that your life is already full, she doesn't feel like she's being recruited into your emptiness. She feels invited into your world. That distinction matters more than most men realize. There is also a philosophical truth here that most people resist. Obsession is not created by intensity, but by meaning. People don't replay moments in their mind because they were loud or dramatic. They replay moments that felt significant. When your words are rooted in conviction, when your actions reflect a clear hierarchy of priorities, every interaction carries weight. You are not trying to impress. You are expressing who you are. This is where detachment becomes misunderstood. Detachment is not emotional coldness. It is emotional self-sufficiency. It means you enjoy connection without depending on it for identity. When you can walk away from an interaction whole, not wounded, not inflated, not diminished, you demonstrate something rare, inner completeness. And completeness is deeply calming to be around. From her perspective, this creates a subtle but powerful tension. She can feel that you value connection, but she can also feel that your life does not orbit around it. That creates a question in her mind. Where does he place his energy when I'm not here? And that question lingers, not because of insecurity, but because of curiosity. Curiosity keeps the mind active. Activity keeps you remembered. This is also where leadership shows itself, not leadership over others, but leadership over self. You don't chase emotional highs. You don't react to mixed signals. You don't rush to define or defend the connection. You allow clarity to reveal itself over time. That patience signals confidence, and confidence, when it's quiet, is magnetic. Many men try to become unforgettable by doing more texting, more explaining, more proving. In reality, you become unforgettable by being more rooted, by living in a way that doesn't bend easily to external approval. When your sense of worth is internally generated, your presence becomes stable. And stability is rare in a culture addicted to stimulation. Over time, she begins to associate you with a feeling rather than a memory. Calm, depth, safety mixed with intrigue. You're not the man who floods her mind with noise. You're the man who creates silence she keeps returning to, the kind of silence that invites reflection. And here's the paradox. When you stop trying to be unforgettable, you start being remembered. When your focus shifts from being chosen to choosing your own path, attraction becomes a byproduct, not the goal. So the real question is not how to stay in her thoughts. It's whether you are building a life that would deserve to be remembered. Because when you live with purpose, restraint, and self-respect, you don't haunt someone's mind by force.